Karen Wood serves as a senior associate with Solstice Public Affairs. She's also been a union executive working on grievance, arbitration, and other labor-related issues. Karen, as we look back on these 40 years of reform and opening up, what role do you think these migrant workers have played in advancing China in this path?
Well, Mike, first of all, migrant workers actually make about 35% of China's total workforce, and they are actually the engine driving behind China's spectacular economic growth for the past 30 years. Now, as China transformed its economy, the government actually wants to develop more economic activities right into the third tier, or what you call rural cities. So that is a way to incentivize and offer initiatives to attract these migrant workers to go back to where their old villages and towns are.
Yeah, workers returning to those rural areas. I mean, we heard in that story this young man saying he wants in 10 years to go back.
That's right.
Yeah, talk to us about that process. I mean, is this a trend, and what's behind it?
It is really a trend. I think that the driving force behind it is, first of all, China has a very ambitious urbanization project set for 2025. For example, the province of Hainan has already set its population target to 1 million more residents. But you have to remember, some of these residents, each province wants to attract back to their cities, are actually a highly skilled workforce. So I think the government is sort of facing a challenge with re-educating, retraining these lowly skilled migrant workers and adapting them gradually to a 21st century economy.
Yeah, that's not easy, is it? In 2016, as you pointed out, migrant workers made up about 35% of China's total workforce. So how have the services improved for this group? How are they targeting them and helping them in this transition that you were just describing?
Well, unfortunately, I don't think the Chinese government has done enough to help and resettle these migrant workers. As we both know, just about 12 months ago, some local governments sort of took a draconian approach to evict literally these what they call a low-end population, and this hasn't certainly set well with migrant workers. And I think as a policy initiative, the government needs to provide better and more affordable housing, better education for these migrant workers, especially their children. And these days, the migrant workers actually face unbelievably a large amount of discrimination, and they are a marginalized group in China. So I think the government really has to drive the point home that social justice matters to these migrant workers, good health care, good education, good opportunities for their families and their children. And I think that's going to make it easier for the migrants to slowly go back to their old cities.
Yeah, so what can be done to actually bring about what you just described? I mean, it doesn't seem, one of the things that I see when I look at stories like this is it doesn't seem like they have a voice in terms of like a spokesperson out there advocating for them. Is that one of their problems?
Well, that's certainly one of the problems, or if you may, some of the advocacy groups who have long been advocating for migrant workers' rights just have not been very influential. But President Xi Jinping has laid out a very ambitious manufacturing plan, Made in China 2025. So not only does the government have to come up with favorable policy that help migrant workers to go back to these third-tier cities, because after all, the government wants to bring back economic development and job growth into these third-tier cities, they also have to invest in human capital, because after all, you cannot have a 20th century workforce working in a 21st century economy.
Karen Wood's joining us from Toronto. Thanks so much for your insights.